Earlier this week, we had a thorough discussion and explanation of the JD Vance is a weirdo meme. And the term weird is one of the latest insults hurled at conservatives by the left. And one person here at Blaze Media predicted that this would happen 3 years ago. So here to explain how he called it is James Poulos, Blaze TV host of 0 Hour. James, one, thank you for filling in for me on Monday when I was out sick. But two, and more importantly, how did you predict that the leftists would label conservatives weirdos all the way back 3 years ago?
Good to see you, Jill. Welcome back. It all started when sometime around 2016, as Donald Trump was first making his splash on the scene, I realized that if I was going to be a real political theorist, like it said on my degree, I'd better figure out what was going on with technology. So fast forward a couple of years, and basically, what you learn if you go to Marshall McLuhan and Jacques Ellul and some of these other guys who saw it all coming in the 70s and 80s is that when we had this big transformation in the dominant technological communications medium, so that was from basically television, televisual media, to now digital, that's a big switch from an environment in which imagination is the most important or influential of our faculties to one where memory is more important. And so the twist is that now with digital, it's the memory of computers. It's the memory of machines. They have this power of recollection, of recall that dwarfs even our own, but suddenly our memories matter a lot more than our fantasies. Anything that you tell a computer to do, it can kind of barf up an image of it, and that really makes the sort of mystique of the creative person not what it used to be. You can look at Hollywood, you can look at the music industry. This is a thing that's happening. So back 3 years ago, what it was that I sort of put together and tweeted out back when it was Twitter was that the idea of weird that was dominant before digital came along was basically toast. And what we're going to see is a renaissance of this sort of idea of weird that goes all the way back to a sort of pre-modern world, because it's all the way back into the Middle Ages. That was the last time that memory mattered as much as it does now in the way that we think about things and experience life. And so if you go back to the 1400s, what you see the origin of the word weird, and that's W-Y-R-D, and that's weird Old English. And what that meant back then was having power over fate or destiny, having a kind of control or manifestation of what was to be. And so the bubbling up of that kind of idea, and if you go on Twitter now, X, you can see that people are making these jokes about JD Vance being this sort of man of destiny, going all the way back to the 1400s definition of weird. So there's a fight right now over what it means to be weird, and you've got yesterday's weirdos trying to present themselves as being the normal ones and attacking what, until yesterday were considered normal people as super duper weird.
Well, James, since I have Steve Deace sitting next to me, we're going to ask you to jump to the theology portion of the weird conversation.
Happy to. Yeah, I mean, look, it's if we're going back to the Middle Ages, theology was a lot more important back then. But so was, superstition was flourishing. There are all kinds of like weird occult stuff going on that ended up bubbling into the Holy Roman Empire during the 15th, 16th centuries, and alchemy, and John Dee, like the court astrologer, seer of Queen Elizabeth. So this stuff has a very old pedigree. But if you're going back to weird, you can think about Macbeth and the weird sisters, the witches. This fantasy, this fascination with knowing the future, with being able to read people's thoughts. This has long been associated with black magic, but it's also long been associated with sort of advanced technology. There's I think it was Arthur C. Clarke who said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So this stuff's been going on for a long time. And I think, one of the things that you're seeing playing out on the right of center right now is you've got some people who think, Christianity is cooked. It's not coming back. Mm-hmm. It's too weak. We need to go back to kind of the old pagan virtue. And those folks are, really interested in talking about destiny and the man of destiny. Ralph Waldo Emerson called Napoleon the man of the world, that kind of great human figure in human history. But you've got a lot of folks on the right still who are like, no, actually, Christianity can never be cooked. And so we shouldn't be obsessed with trying to understand, predict the future. We should focus right now on what's in our own hearts and what's in the present. This is an important debate, important conversation, and it's going to get more important, I think, as time goes on.
So, I mean, James, I'm a theo nerd. I'm a Bible guy. I put the fun in fundamentalism. Okay, so this whole conversation that you're rolling with is speaking my love language, because I represent a worldview that has been called weird from the outset. I mean, the Romans called us cannibals for practicing communion or the Eucharist. We were called polytheist by the Muslims during the Crusades. Okay, the Puritans were considered weird even by their own Protestant brethren in the Church of England for thinking it was a bad idea to let the king determine what sermons could be preached on Sundays. This line of attack that you are articulating, even the idea of paganism and Gnosticism is kind of the other word that we're going for here with what you're describing. But this idea of attacking orthodoxy, whether religious, moral, philosophical, etc., that usually finds itself based in some form of revelation or Judeo-Christian worldview, the idea that the broader world or the pagan world would attack it is weird. As you're pointing out, this actually goes back to the very opening tenets of Christianity. It was weird, peculiar, odd. The fact these people don't make sacrifices to idols the way that we do and every other religion does. So what can you tell us about these historical cultural clashes and how the weird objective was eventually overcame?
Well, gosh, I mean, there's so much here, more than can possibly fit into one segment. Unfortunately, as a capital O Orthodox Christian, I've got lots of feelings on this topic. I mean, I think one thing that I'd say kind of as a way to cut into this is I'm old enough to remember when there was another word for weird out there, and it was queer. And, that word has sort of become like this political football, and they're trying to like reclaim it and make it seem normal, normalize queerness. There's been a lot of that discourse going on. And I think what you see with wokeness as a whole, if I can paint with a broad brush, and then what you see with sort of the techies as a whole, also painting with a broad brush, is a kind of frustration with the given limits of our created human being. And so on the woke side, it's like perversity is actually good. Like you can have any gender you want. You can have more than one at any given time. Sex is just kind of this outlet for, creating and destroying identities and playing with it and, sort of Marquis de Sade stuff. And then what you have coming out of the tech side is, okay, humans are limited. We can do better. We need to kind of create the next phase in our evolution, and technology is going to be the thing that does that. In both cases, they're sort of looking at the given human body, the given human creation, and they're saying not good enough, even maybe a source of injustice or a source of, stagnation or nihilism. And these two powerful forces are different. Not all techies are sort of pervy wokes, although there are plenty in tech world if you want to, if you know how to find them. And then, of course, not all wokies are obsessed with technology, although I think they increasingly see that the only way that they can really take full control over this country is by seizing full control of tech. And that's why you get some conflict between tech and woke. But the two sort of big forces sort of converging on criticisms of the given human body, those things can be very mutually reinforcing. And so I think, Christians do have a wake-up call where it's like, look, you've got powerful fundamental attacks on the sacredness of the given human person coming from what the left is today and then from much of what tech is today. And if Christians are going to do something about that and do something constructive, I think, they got to wise up, not just in terms of getting up to speed on what the latest and greatest is in tech. Some of that can be helpful, some of that less helpful. But really, again, just what you said, recognizing what it really means to not be of this world, but rather in this world. And when you are willing to take that step, and it fundamentally comes, I think, from the heart, not from the head, from courage, more than just sort of, trying to think really hard about stuff, then I think, they're going to get traction, and life in America is going to get a lot more interesting.
Would it be suffice to say, based on how you just answered my last question, that the dividing line is here that Christianity looks at human nature, or humanity, as a sacred creation, but human nature in and of itself as flawed and therefore in need of reconnection with its creator? Where the Gnostic or pagan world that you're describing does not see human nature or humanity as sacred, but sees humanity as flawed, doesn't even look necessarily at the sacredness of humanity in and of itself, but humanity is flawed and therefore they need a fixing, and they're the ones, of course, that are going to fix us.
Yes, it needs to be fixed by us in order to finally get beyond all the horrible things about being human. I mean, look, the Christian message is, not only were we created by an all-powerful God who's Lord of all things, but by a God who, loves us, who personally loves us, are the people we are individually that we have been created to be. And I'm sorry to say, nowadays in some ways that's a tough sell. There are a lot of people out there, no, I refuse to believe that God loves me. Well, maybe things just need to get a little bit worse in order for more people to really take that concept seriously again. But if you start thinking about it now, before things get really terrible, before you're sort of out on the street, or we're fighting Mad Max wars for cans of water or fresh apples, you don't have to wait that long. You can have that change of heart right now.
James, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, thanks.
Yeah, he said yesterday's weirdos are today's establishment. Steve, that's what we have to look forward to.